you did something with Candace Owens, right? Like recently or something. So,
yeah, we had a little schmooze.
Right. Does she? I thought that she's not. I thought she's pro-Palestine, isn't she?
Well, it's a little more complicated.
Even though that she's a
Republican
conservative, I know all that, but
I think in her case it was a little bit more complicated than that, where she, there's like you can get psychoanalytical about it, but she was like a fan of my comedy before all this, so that's how she sort of knew who I was. She had reviewed some old video, like she had like done some videos about like some impressions of mine, so she was like a fan from online stuff. But then when this whole thing started to happen, she was drawing very strange, bizarre connections and dots between, like, I think this bad experience she had with the Jewish community that's more left of center, that before all this maybe cried wolf too often about anti-Semitism where it doesn't exist, so that when it did exist in real time in front of all of us, very obviously, she had this instinct to not want to call it like it is. And maybe that happened in the case with Kanye because she had a personal connection with him, but she had this stance of being against cancel culture and against censorship, and therefore nothing is worth canceling and nothing is worth censoring or calling out. There was a bit of an instinctual, bizarre, stance to take, where also being surrounded at where she is in the environment around a lot of pro-Israel views, maybe it called some things into question, and she was questioning things and putting out statements on Twitter that were questionable, curious, and I took issue with some of her tweets, particularly about how thinking that Jews were weaponizing anti-Semitism to silence people into compliance. And to her credit, she reached out after I had tweeted at her a pretty firm tweet about it, being critical, and she invited me on her show to talk about it. And it wasn't under the context of, like, we're going to have a debate. It was, let's like have a conversation. So we had like an hour-long conversation about Israel, about anti-Semitism. And I think because she didn't grow up with, around these issues and close to this issue, it was an opportunity to really just engage in dialogue, as opposed to when people say things you disagree with or you find troubling, you could either scream at it or you can talk to it. And I think ignorance is easier to combat than hate. So I would say she wasn't necessarily pro or against, but having a conversation that was constructive was probably the best way to tackle that. So we had a good constructive conversation about it. As far as what motivated and everything like that, I can't really speak to anything beyond that. I can speak to sort of how I interface with her, and it was civil and cordial, and I think constructive, because there were moments in the conversation where she did, say, yeah, I'll have to think about that. I didn't know that, or I have to reconsider that. The next week on, she had Norman Finkelstein, so oh my God.
She wants you to say Candace Owens is an anti-Semite. Just say it.
She wants me to say it?
Yeah,
Jennifer wants me to say it?
I think so. Just say it.
So then she had on Norman Finkelstein the next week, and he said, Candace, Ami's full of shit. No, so I don't really know. But I do think there's we can walk and chew gum at the same time, and there are like, I do think that we can learn as a community that, like, calling Whoopi Goldberg and Richard Spencer the same thing is not an effective thing to do, and not a correct thing to do. Like, to throw around anti-Semitism as an accusation at everything that seems questionable, I think we have to be more nuanced and fine-tuned than that, because then what happens is when we see it in the streets of the UK and France on college campuses, and then we're calling it out, there were some people who like say, well, I don't know, like, you guys are always calling it out. So, like, it was an example of someone who I think, because you overuse a term and try to find racism where it doesn't exist, that when it does exist, it's hard. Some people have meet it with suspicion,
Well, I just saw a video. I mean, to be honest with you, I just saw one video with her and Tucker Carlson from a bit ago, and it was really off-putting. And I was surprised because, number one, she works with Ben Shapiro, who's like another Orthodox Jewish person. Doesn't he run Daily Wire? So I would think that would have been maybe a combative. I don't know where it landed now. You probably have more. I'm curious. What happened? Like, is everything fine now? I mean.
So I was sort of found myself, after I had that conversation, in like the center of a hurricane of what was going on internally at like the Daily Wire. And then her and Ben were on Twitter duking it out, which I think is just not a place when you work together in a massive media entity. That's probably not the best place to hash out anything.
Right.
But I think I can't speak to the inside soup of what was going on there. All I could see was from the outside perspective. They sort of put a lid on it, and Jeremy, the head of Daily Wire, put out a statement, and then Candace had a baby and is on maternity leave. So, like, it's kind of done, at least for now. The fires were put out, and it is what it is. I'm happy with the fact that her and I were able to sort of have a a civil conversation. And I just think that is an example of how to move the needle in a more constructive way. Not everybody, I think, would qualify to engage with. But in this case, like if somebody's not aware of something, that's very different than holding a hostile view or antagonistic view, you know?
No, I agree. I agree. Like I understand what you're saying, but
the Tucker conversation was also bizarre because he was like, I mean, I feel bad for what's going on in Israel, but fentanyl. I'm like, what are we talking about here? It's like the main issue I had with all of it was it wasn't as if the Jewish community was demanding that Tucker or Candace or anyone in the space care more about Israel than the Jews do, but it is as if they were demanding the Jewish community care less.
Exactly. That
as
was
if it like you know, and it's like you're offending the fact that we've been on the crusade against, you know, people against racism, against white people, or against, you know, domestic issues that we have in this country. So you caring so much about Israel is offensive to us. And we're like, what? That doesn't make any sense at all.
No, it makes zero sense.
Jews who are conservative and right-wing have been speaking out of those issues too all this time. So like it got a little bizarre and a little weird. But anyway, yeah.
They're very bizarre, weird people, so it's not shocking.
But she, sorry, I was going to say she's so polarizing, which is why she does so well in her.
Oh, you were making that point about online.
That wasn't my point. That's like another point. It's like you know, you can walk and chew gum. It's both points. You know?
Yeah.
I think she knows what she's doing more than Ami does. I think she's a little bit more calculating than.
Yeah, you think so? Yeah, I would venture to agree with you on that one.
Yeah, I think she's very good at what she does, and she knows if it's subconscious, she knows what's going to work and what's not going to work.
Yeah, no, she's very strategic.
I would have been inclined to agree until you talk to someone face to face and you get a different sense a little bit about where they're coming from. It's just it changes you a little bit.
I think it's more instinctual where I don't think she even has a deep opinion about it like you're saying, but I think she knows in her gut like this is going to play. This is not going to play.
Well, then
that's where she works from.
You're ascribing a motivation there a little bit though.
Yeah, I think her motivation is views.
I agree.
Notoriety.
I think you're not giving her enough credit where credit's due. I think she's very clever and knows that if you're going to spark a lot of attention and heat when you are speaking contrary to what would be considered, like she knows that that's going to happen. I think to your point, I agree actually.
But the two things are not mutually exclusive. Knowing something will be provocative, and genuinely believing that thing as you say it can still be one and the same.
Yeah, they can be.
Think about that. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that she's unaware like that it's going to be provocative. And maybe in certain cases, I was surprised to find out that she claimed to me, at least I could take her at her word when she told me about certain tweets she made. Like, I didn't think that would get the reaction. I was shocked by that, which to me maybe just highlighted an insensitivity or an ignorance to say like history of Jewish persecution for thousands of years and the pattern. She made a set of line to me in the conversation that was pretty revealing where she's like, well, Jews are doing well. And I was like, 75 years or so, like the past few, this generation. But like, I think there's a lack of awareness of like the decades and centuries and thousands year long persecution of Jews that we've seen in society after society. And I don't think she's as aware of that as we might assume she would be because we grew up totally affiliated with that.
But don't you think that she would, oh, sorry. See, no. I was just going to say like, she's like, you know, she's peers with Ben Shapiro, who's exceptionally outspoken on what's going on here. You don't think, you know,
she's here. Candace, do you want to say anything to Jonathan?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
I know, but no, but it's true. Like,
she's right behind you, actually.
Conversations that you and I are not privy to, okay? You don't think that, like, she would have this background information or she would have a conversation with him or they should have a dialogue? Like, what? Like, the first time she's hearing about this or she's asking these questions into the ether when she's, like, speaking to Tucker, when her boss is, like, out there, you know, speaking so... I think articulately and eloquently about it, but
yes, but if I'm being gracious, it's like, you know, you work at Ben Shapiro's. I don't know to what extent he's the boss of her. Like she's on contract there. It's a huge company.
No, but you know what I mean. They work together.
But he's in Florida. She's in Nashville. Like, you know, she might operate in. If I'm giving the benefit of the doubt, it's possible she operates in her own lane with her own team, and it's sort of delegated that way. And to the extent that they get into like deep, genuine conversations about it, I don't really know. And this stuff only comes into the forefront, like when it comes into the forefront. You know, all of a sudden Israel's front and center in this very visceral, painful way. And I think there is for a lot of people in this sort of weird neoconservative, like isolationist strain that has like surfaced. There's a lot of post PTSD from bad U.S. domestic policy about Iraq and impulsively getting into wars. So they lump Israel and the U.S.-Israel relationship in with that. Oh, we like it's Ukraine or Russia or like any other foreign entanglement, when they don't really understand the history of the strategic alliance that deeply. So it's like I just don't want to get involved in anything. So like no, we're not going to like care about this issue because that's their business. So if I'm taking a generous interpretation of it, it's not like she was completely unaware of all of that. But again, like it definitely warrants a part 2 conversation to get into it at some point. But I can only go with what she was, relaying to me in the moment, where I said I was just saying, we're really getting into the weeds here, but like, I just thought genocide is just wrong. No, what genocide is wrong. Like, I'm just saying genocide is wrong. What's wrong with that? I was responding to genocidal language. I'm like, yeah, but like the slander that's been going on against Israel of this accusation of genocide. So like, I maybe take for granted how exposed I am, and in it I am. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think in order to effectively change minds and persuade and move the needle, you have to take people at their word when you're interfacing with them, especially face to face.
Yeah.
It's like Scott Galloway was saying to us when we spoke to him, and I know you spoke to him also, like the same way we give Elon Musk a pass, like she's not just some person. It's her job to be informed. She has like a budget and a team
I agree.
and a show.
Yeah.
And it's her, that's what she does for a living, be informed.
100%.
The best people in the world. And like to just say, oh, but she doesn't know about this one is like, oh, sure, you can excuse it if you want, but why are we excusing it? Why are we
100%.
I didn't. I went on the show to confront it. That's the whole thing.
Not you. I mean,
no, I don't think he's talking about you. But
I'm just saying, like,
I agree
you're
with
right.
you, though. You're acting as if she doesn't have a team of people and her own. Like this is somebody who this is where we're in a problem, right? Because we're people who have big voices and platforms are spewing, even if it's not necessary. Like maybe in her case, it wasn't like bashing Jews, right? But it's like it's people with a big platform who are making people rethink Israel in a negative light is dangerous when we are such a limited amount of people as it is, and when we are losing in numbers, and when I think it's not only is it not safe, I think it's like it's ignorant, and it's scary.
Yeah,
scary.
And it's creating, and also even like in the Kanye stuff, that like you could write off what he's saying as, oh, he's just crazy, he's off his rocker, he's out of his mind. But him being permitted to say those things, that's the Overton window that gets open of like, you can say this about Jews now, and like, yeah, he'll get a little punished for it and lose a few licensing deals, but now everyone can kind of talk about Jews in this suspicious way. This toxic culture of anti-Semitism is sort of back in the
zeitgeist. Yeah, no,
and it's allowed to be spoken about so openly. Twitter is just full of it. All I'm relaying to you is I agree with what you're saying in a sense, but I'm relaying to you my report from having interfaced and had a conversation with her about it. What do I think was going, like, we're trying to ascribe motivation here. Is it malice? Is it ignorance? Is it all these things?
I think it's irresponsible. That's the word I'm looking for.
Irresponsible.
It's irresponsible because you are giving somebody in a platform where you're giving somebody an idea that maybe they should rethink, like, oh, maybe Jews aren't great, or maybe I shouldn't like Jews, or maybe Israel's really not something I should be promoting.
It all starts.
Like, that's what I'm saying. You're giving them like that ammunition.
Introducing the suspicion. Yeah, you're introducing suspicion into the conversation.
Yes,
it's like really
and it's
dangerous old poison.
And that's the problem.
When I saw it happening in her case, like just to wrap it up, it was like I went to confront that exact thing and say, I know you might not realize what you're doing when you're doing this, but this is what's happening. And now and the second question you're asking is like, after coming away with it, what do I think was motivating it? And I would say it was more motivated by a lack of awareness to what was really going on than anything malicious, because we were able to have a civil conversation about it. And even though she might be aware of something that might be provocative or cause a stir, to the extent that when you talk to people, like, you have to assume it's in good faith and that they're genuine in what they're telling you. Otherwise, it's going to devolve, and you won't get anywhere with anybody.
Right.
I do think there's a through line though with what you were saying before about other influencers and people in the media not stepping up and talking about it, and then sort of what we're talking about with Candace. Like I think there's something cool going on in the Jewish community of people who wish to acknowledge it and want to be aware of it. Of like there's like a bit of pride going on of like push your friends to say something. Like don't excuse it. Like don't be gracious about it. Be proud about it and be strong about it. And like, it's not the time to be gracious. It's the time to be strong. And I think the world's not used to that. The world's not used to Jews behaving that way. And it's rubbing a lot of people the wrong way. I mean, like, I think I see it with you when you talk about, your peers and colleagues. And I think it's like a wonderful thing personally.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was moved by Scott Galloway's thing too. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not gracious at all. I mean, I'll shame you if I have to. I have no problem doing that. And, Scott, by the way, so Prof G, I always forget his name is Scott Gall. I always call him Prof G.
Prof G.
But he's been on my podcast a bunch, I think, twice or 2 or 3 times. I've been on his. I really like him. I like his perspective. I like the way he's very thoughtful in how he speaks.
Yeah, very measured, very thoughtful.
Very measured.
We're in a crisis right now.
Yeah,
Jennifer, we're in a crisis right now, a total crisis of young men who have no idea where their moral center is. I mean, where are all the celebrities and Jewish people talking about this? Where are all the other Jews? I mean, we got Jessica Seinfeld, Deborah Messing. Where is everybody else? I mean, we're in an absolute crisis right now.
Oh my God, that is so good.